Alright people, what's going on? Space Cowboy here. Welcome back to the channel with another video for you guys today. Before we get started, make sure to hit this video with a like. You guys have been doing a great job of hitting the like button and it's definitely showing, so continue to do so. I'm very appreciative of that. Also, subscribe if you're new, because about 96% of you guys that are watching are not subscribed. So if you want to get more Dallas Cowboys content from yours truly, make sure to subscribe. And finally hit the notification bell to be notified when I post new content or go live so you don't miss out on the action. So as you can see by the title of the video, obviously we're continuing our position evaluation series for the Dallas Cowboys. We finished up the offense, so if you missed out on that, at the top right of the screen there is going to be a link to the playlist so you can get caught up on the other position evaluations we have done so far. So if you're all caught up, let's get straight into it. So today we're talking about the defensive line and more so starting the defense, okay, as you could say. Now, when it comes to the defense, before I go any further into talking about the players, we first need to understand, okay, what exactly are we looking at defensive scheme-wise? Like, what are we going to be looking at with the Cowboys? Now, if you remember with the previous administration with Jason Garrett and Rod Marinelli, it was a Tampa 2 style defense, which if you don't know, it's basically a 4-3 base with mostly the cover 2 type of style of defense, and it was extremely bland, and we would complain. You know, listen, we complained about it all the time as fans, content creators, this, that, and a third, because we understood the issues that existed, and also the fact of other defensive coaches not really doing a really good job, and they weren't really doing anybody any service with how they were carrying out, helping to train some of these guys. For example, Chris Richard being one of those notable guys, but we'll get to that when we get to cornerbacks. So that's a couple episodes down the line. But with that being said, let's get to this defensive line talk. Now, you look at the defensive linemen on the Cowboys, there are 16 of them currently on roster, which is a mix of veterans, undrafted rookies, free agents, rookies, you know what I mean? So let's start out by just saying this. I'm not necessarily going to be talking about like, oh, this is who starter, because it's very ambiguous when it comes to that. There are people that you know are going to be starters. So for example, DeMarcus Lawrence is a starter on your defensive line. Obviously, you pay him all that money. He's pretty good. And I think that with him being in this new defensive scheme, which should be a hybrid type of scheme, primarily 4-3, but it's going to be more so of a hybrid. I really do think that DeMarcus Lawrence is going to see a bit of a resurgence in himself this season, if we do have a season, which we should. It's just, when you see what's been going on with DeMarcus Lawrence, keep in mind that a lot of people like to say that because he doesn't have a lot of sack numbers, he isn't good. And I've tried to stress this with people. Defensive linemen don't need sacks, per se, to be a good defensive lineman. And what I mean by that is, I'm not saying that pass rush isn't important. That's not what I'm insinuating. What I'm trying to get at is that defensive linemen have more roles than just simply getting to the quarterback. Yes, at the end of the day, you want to sack the quarterback every damn play, but there are other things that are involved, such as stopping the run, disrupting pass lanes, etc., etc. And DeMarcus has done pretty well against the run, and a lot of people have really ignored that from what I have seen. Okay, another key important thing here is Tyrone Crawford. I think a lot of people missed Tyrone Crawford and how important he is to the defensive line. He really is a staple there. And listen, I do agree that he is getting paid a hell of a lot of money for the type of role he has. So don't be shocked if he comes back to the Cowboys on a cheap salary, which personally I would try to do unless you have a plan in place or he just, again, he has a big fall off in play where you can't really justify bringing him back. But that's, again, a whole nother like hypothetical situation. But you look at what's going on with this defensive line, and you know what the biggest concern was? Okay, we need to get some big guys, some baconators, those, whatever you want to refer to it as. I've heard it referred to as that. I've been hearing it from all these other people, how you can refer to big defensive linemen, more so defensive tackles. Cowboys got two of them in the offseason. They got Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, both of which former Carolina Panthers, I should add. And the fact of the matter is that those are the type of guys that we have been looking for. All right. Dontari Poe's coming into the Dallas Cowboys on a 1-year deal. Gerald McCoy coming in on a 3-year deal. And you look at what the Cowboys have been able to do, and yeah, you might say, well, maybe they should have addressed it with their first-round pick or whatever this case, because I've seen that as well. But let's keep this in mind, right? Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe will provide good production for what you're paying them, right? And keep in mind, we're not asking for an all-pro to exist in the middle of the defensive line. I mean, yeah, that would be awesome. But what we needed, and this is what's troubled the Cowboys, is they haven't had a big defensive lineman that could plug up the run in the middle. That's what's been killing them. Especially you saw that during the season. You saw that last year in the previous season in 2018 in that playoff game versus the Rams. The Cowboys went more with the fast, kind of agile type of defensive tackle rather than the big, beefy type of defensive tackle, which we needed, okay? And yeah, I do think that I would have loved for the Cowboys to spend, a higher draft. Yeah, you could say that in hindsight, because I said this before the draft. I would love for them to go get a defensive tackle or whoever the hell, but obviously, when you see how that draft went, I mean, to get Neville Gallimore in the 3rd round is one hell of a pick. That's number one. And then you look at getting Bradley Anae, which I understand he doesn't play that position, the defensive tackle position, but you add another solid piece to that rotation. That is huge, okay? And I know I'm spitballing with certain positions and certain players, but when it comes to the defensive line, again, very ambiguous where people could start. Now, Randy Gregory and Alden Smith are going to be key contributors to this defensive line because Alden Smith, guess what? The only way you're paying him that full $4 million, right, is if he gets 14 plus sacks and he plays and is active for all 16 games. That's very damn good. Also, with Randy Gregory, he should be back soon, and guess what? If he's back, he's your starter at the other side of the defensive line, okay? But you know why? Because I'm not sure if I've been the only one saying this. I know there are a couple people that have said this, and we pretty much expressed the same thought process. Listen, Randy Gregory is the most natural pass rusher on this team, bar none. That's why he was so coveted when he was coming out of the 2015 draft of his pass rushing ability. The problem was his inner demons, which got him. And I do think if this situation with the NFL finally, taking out that specific, rule to where you can't get suspended for marijuana, I do think that Randy Gregory will be able to do very damn well. And if the Cowboys can bring him back on a cheap deal, whether if it's like a 2 or 3 year deal and when his current contract's done, I'm cool with that. Because guess what? You want to keep as many talented guys as possible, and I think that you can do that with Randy Gregory. We'll see what happens, but I'm looking at these other guys at the defensive line rotation. You got Antoine Woods, then you got a Jalen Jux, Joe Jackson, Tristan Hill. Okay, and I'm going to talk about Tristan Hill real quick. Now, Tristan Hill's on very thin ice when it comes to his position with the Cowboys. 2nd round pick from 2019, and the biggest concern, and many people have been mentioning this, is when you have a guy that you spend high draft capital on who's a healthy scratch week in and week out, there's a problem, okay? Now, we'll see what Tristan Hill does in this coaching staff, but keep in mind he's not married to this coach. I mean, the phrase, he's not married to the coaching staff. It's like we're not tied to him, okay? So when that happens, guess what? They don't care. They can let him go because he wasn't a part of their plan. Maybe, who knows? Tristan Hill's on very thin ice. Maybe he gets better. Maybe he shows some flashes. But if I'm Tristan Hill, be very careful, dude. You can't afford to slip up because if you do, odds are you're gone. And honestly, if you look at this defensive line rotation, it really depends on how many defensive linemen the Cowboys are wanting to bring in, because you could honestly make a case that Tristan Hill can't even make the 53-man roster, even regardless of the contract he's been given with that 2nd round selection, and not that that affects much. But You know, it's like if you got Randy Gregory coming back, and then you got Neville Gallimore, your 3rd-round pick, you got Tyrone Crawford, okay, then you got DeMarcus Lawrence, and then you got Antoine Woods, already named 5, and then you got Bradley and Alden Smith, that's 7. So the Cowboys are going to be facing a huge decision at the defensive line position, because there might be a situation where the Cowboys might have to stack up on defensive linemen this year, which I would support. I think that you should go extra at defensive line, because, you know, a lot of these guys, they're going to be on the chopping block. Like, it's tough to see how some of these other guys lower on the depth chart that were on the practice squad last year can make the 53-man roster, especially if they don't do well in the preseason. So we'll see what happens. Okay, so we'll see what happens there. Overall, if you were going to ask me to give a grade for the defensive line position, I'm going to have this as the most, on this spectrum. I would say currently the Cowboys defensive line is a B. Okay, it's a solid B, solid group right now, because we don't know exactly what we're looking for. It can go upwards to a B+ to A-, so we'll say the range is B to A-. Why is that? Because if the Dallas Cowboys can get production out of Gerald McCoy and Dontari Poe, which I do expect, and Alden Smith and Randy Gregory come back and they're doing their thing, and the defensive line starts doing a hell of a lot more than they did last year, this can definitely be a really damn good position group for the Cowboys, and you can compare it maybe to the rest of the NFL's up there, but I doubt that. But it just comes down to what happens to your 2 wild cards in Alden Smith and Randy Gregory, and more so the defensive tackle position. What goes on with Gerald McCoy, Dontari Poe, Tristan Hill? Do they bring something, right? Because if all things work out, the defensive line position could possibly be the most improved part of your team. I think that's and yes, you did lose Robert Quinn, you lost Malik Collins, you lost some guys on that defensive line, but I think the Cowboys did a good enough job to bring in guys to, replenish those losses and get back on track. So I think I've gone on for long enough. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. So without further ado, leave in the comments section how you feel about the defensive line, and more importantly, what you're expecting out of the defensive line this year. Also, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed this content. With that being said, I will see you guys later. Peace out, guys. Bye-bye.